Let's talk about book cover design when you're self-publishing your book, because there's two different routes you can take. You can hire someone to design your book cover, or you can take the DIY route and do your book cover yourself. And that's exactly what we're talking about today, doing a budget-friendly book cover all on your own. Hello everyone, my name is Maddie Lynn. I'm an author, book cover designer, and the creator of the Book Launch Planner series, and I make weekly videos on the business of being an author. So if that sounds good to you, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a new upload. So when it comes to DIY book cover design, it's really broken down into four major things, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I personally am a professional book cover designer. I've worked with dozens and dozens of authors to design their book covers and help them bring their books to reality. I also created a course on book cover design. So if you want to learn about the book cover design process from start to finish, then make sure to check out that course. Otherwise, today we're going to give a broad overview of the cover design process and talk about it here. So hiring someone can vary a lot in terms of how much you're going to spend. You can find a very budget-friendly designer, or most times you get what you pay for. So the more budget-friendly your book cover designer is, the more amateur the book cover may end up looking. Whereas if you hire a book cover designer who has a lot of experience, you will end up spending more, but the product will be better. There's a lot that goes into book cover design, but the most budget-friendly option is indeed to design your book cover yourself. Now this option is a little tricky because I believe that book cover design is something that does take time to learn. It's not something you often get right off the bat, but the more practice you get with it, the better your results will be. And if you can learn to design your own book covers as an author, especially an author that publishes multiple books, you will be saving hundreds and maybe even thousands of dollars throughout the publishing process. So let's dive into it, the budget-friendly options that you have for designing your own book cover. So the first thing you're going to need to figure out is what software you're going to be using, because you need to use some sort of software to design your book cover. I feel like there's two major softwares that most people tend to use. There's Canva, which has a free and paid version, and then there's Photoshop, which you do have to pay for. Now, I personally use Adobe Photoshop. I use the Creative Cloud version, and that is also the same version I use in my book cover design course. So be mindful of that if you do decide to sign up for the course. This particular version of Photoshop is subscription based, so you pay either a monthly or yearly fee to use the software, but you always get the most updated version of the software, and the software is extremely robust, and there is a little bit of a learning curve, but once you figure out how to use software, it is a tool you will use time and time again, not only for your book cover, but also if you want to make graphics for social media and any sort of marketing material. Now, Canva is another great tool. It's a little more user-friendly, more beginner-friendly, and it does actually have a template in there to design book covers. But Canva isn't exactly the best software for book cover design. It doesn't have a lot of the photo editing capabilities that Photoshop has, whereas Photoshop really lets you manipulate photos. Canva has a lot of photo editing options, but it's not nearly as advanced as Photoshop. So if you want to make a more basic cover, Canva is great, but if you're someone who wants to be able to manipulate photos and really customize your book cover, you'll be less frustrated when working with Adobe Photoshop, and you'll also have a lot more options working with Adobe Photoshop. Now, going back to Canva, it has a free and a paid version. So you can get a lot of the features in Canva for free, but some of their more advanced features are paid. And also, if you get the paid version of Canva, there's a lot of stock in Canva that you can use when you sign up for their paid version. Now, there's also dozens and dozens of other types of photo editing softwares out there. I'm only mentioning Canva and Photoshop because I do feel those are the two most popular ones that authors tend to use. But if there's another photo editing software that you enjoy as an author, be sure to comment it down below. That way other authors can figure out and see what options they have for softwares to design book covers. The next thing you'll need to figure out, and probably least explanatory, is having the knowledge to design design a book cover, because a lot goes into designing book covers. There's the knowledge of knowing like what works in cover design, and also the knowledge of knowing how to use the software to design your book cover. So when it comes to the knowledge of knowing what works, it's just knowing what the genre trends are and knowing some of the basic design principles of what makes book designs work and what makes book designs not work. Now, this is something I talk a lot about in my course, because there are some design principles when it comes to typography and book cover design that you just need to know before you even start the design process. Just like there are rules in grammar, there are rules in graphic design, and it's something that you should be mindful of. You also just want to be mindful of what the genre trends are. So different genres like thrillers, fantasy, romance will have very specific looks for their book covers, and you want to follow those trends to make sure your book kind of blends in with the rest of the crowd while also still standing out from the crowd at the same time. So it's this balance that you have to figure out as a designer. Now, the other part of the knowledge is knowing how to use the software that you're going to use to design your book cover. Now, there's no one-stop shop to learn everything about a software in one place. I did try to make my book cover design course as comprehensive as possible. In fact, my book cover design course is actually broken up into 3 separate courses. The first course is on Photoshop, so it just teaches you the basics of Photoshop if you're someone who has never used Photoshop in your life before. The second course is on typography, so there's a lot to be said about typography, but this course just teaches you how to add typography to your book cover, the rules of using typography in design, and basically if you're someone who plans on using character art for your book cover and you just need to add typography to your book, that's where this course comes in hand. Now, the third course is the book cover design course. I designed the third course assuming you already took the first 2 courses, and we take those foundational things that we've already learned and we build upon it to learn more complex things like photo manipulation to create a super custom book cover for your book. Now, the course is in 3 different parts, so you can pick and choose what fits your needs, but you can also buy it as a course bundle to take all 3 courses and learn it all. Another place you can go to learn about book cover design is to watch speed design videos on YouTube. I personally have done screen recordings of a couple of my book cover designs and then sped them up and posted them here on YouTube. I have a whole playlist on YouTube, so if you want to watch some of those videos, I will leave them linked below. Sometimes it's incredibly helpful just to watch someone design something from start to finish. Even if you don't know exactly how they're doing some of the things, just watching the process can be extremely valuable. The next thing you need to take into account is images. What type of images are you putting on your book cover? So for anyone who's been on my YouTube channel for a very long time, these book covers may be familiar to you. They are the original book covers for my debut novel Essence and I Am Mercy. And what's different about these book covers versus the other book covers that I have now is that these book covers, I took these photos myself. In fact, it's me on the book cover, which is slightly embarrassing, but this is what we call a budget-friendly book cover design, because that's me on the cover and that's me on the cover. It got the job done at the time, and honestly, I still very much love the cover of Essence, but I was never a huge fan of the cover of I Am Mercy, and eventually I rebranded and gave both the books new covers to just give them a fresh breath of air, and I'm really happy with the new covers. But this is a great example of how you can take your own photos, whether the photo ends up being of you or you have someone else kind of act as a model for you. But when you take your own photos, you own all rights to the photos and you don't have to worry about purchasing rights to any photos. So speaking of purchasing rights to photos, that's where stock photos come in hand. So if you don't take your own photos, do know that any photos you use on your book cover, you have to own the rights to those photos. So almost all book covers I design, I use stock photos, and I typically go to depositphotos.com. That's my favorite place to go to for stock photos. There's a bunch of different places you can go to for stock photos, but that one I find is the most budget friendly and has a great selection selection still. Now, a lot of authors don't like using stock photos because anyone can use stock photos. So a photo you use on your book cover, someone else can use on their book cover. But the trick is that if you take a stock photo, you can do photo manipulation to it to make it look different and maybe even unrecognizable and really customized for your book. Now, of course, this is where learning about photo manipulation comes into hand. It's definitely a more advanced thing, but it is something that I talk about in my course. And the last thing you can use as imagery on your book cover is hiring someone to do character art. Character art is fantastic, it's beautiful, but it's not always the most budget friendly because you are hiring someone to create custom artwork for your book. This does not come cheap. Now, some character artists who are brand new to the field are much more budget friendly, so that is something you can look into, but most of the time you're looking into paying hundreds of dollars, which is why it's not budget friendly, but it is very cool. Or maybe you're someone who's really good at illustrating and you can design your own character art. That's also fantastic. All right, the last thing I want to talk about today is formatting your book for print because this is kind of the last step in the process. So let's assume that you designed your book cover and now you want to figure out how to get it ready to be printed. Because when you look at a book cover, it's not just the cover, it's also the spine and the back of the book. And that's where things can get a little more confusing because depending on your book will also depend on how thick the spine is. But basically what you do is you grab a template from your print-on-demand company. In this case, this book was printed through Kindle Direct Publishing. So you put in all the info for KDP, which is the page count, what paper color, and what the size of your book is going to be. And then you are given a template that basically looks like this. And then you design the rest of your book wrap from there, adding in all the typography and making sure you're mindful of the bleed at the edges of the design. Now, I go through all of this in detail in a recent YouTube video, so I will leave that YouTube video linked down below if you want to see the entire process of designing a paperback wrap. Otherwise, I also show the entire process for a paperback wrap, hardcover jacket, and hardcover case laminate in my book cover design course. So again, that'll be linked down below. I will say once you design one book cover wrap, it's pretty self-explanatory and easy to figure out from there. But you just have to be super mindful that you put in the right specifications into KDP when they give you the print template because they are very specific about exactly how the template needs to be prepared. So those are my tips on doing a DIY budget-friendly book cover for yourself. If you have additional tips that you want to share, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. If you want to check out any of my book cover design courses, make sure to visit the links in the description of this video. I also have a course on formatting your book for print and ebook using Adobe InDesign, so make sure to check out that as well. Otherwise, I'll see you all next week. Thank you for watching.